Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more waterfowl patterning, and today we've got another new shell that we've never tested on the channel before, and it's definitely going to be a pretty interesting one because I think we're going to see some really nice performance out of it. But as for that shell we've got here today, big thank you to Keith and the guys over at Salt Creek for sending some of these over. As usual, I'm not paid or sponsored or anything by them. They just make a good shell and wanted to see me try some. But those shells are some of these, some of the Salt Creek triple curl waterfowl shells. Now these ones in particular are a 20 gauge 2 3/4 inch 7/8 ounce payload of number 9 TSS shot, moving about 1400 feet per second. So a waterfowl load that is loaded with TSS number 9s. We got a good number of pellets while also carrying enough energy out to that 40 to 45 yard range for your average size ducks and stuff as well. Definitely going to be very interesting to see what kind of a pattern we can get out of these, because if you've seen anything recently, then you know that Salt Creek makes some really good shells. So I expect to see some really nice performance out of these either which way. And as for the setup I've got to run them through today, I brought out the Stevens 301 20 gauge. Technically it is the turkey model, but that doesn't mean anything in particular other than camouflage stock and came with a factory turkey choke in it. But as for a choke, I did talk to Keith and he said test anything from a cylinder up to a modified. That typically seems to be a pretty good range for these shells for waterfowl purposes. So I figured we'll kind of start right in the middle today and we can go up and down from here based on what we see. So I threw in a flush factory style improved cylinder choke. I will put the actual constriction of this particular choke up on the screen for those of you curious about it, but it is a very standard flush mount improved cylinder choke that should give us a pretty nice waterfowl pattern with these shells. But as for the test today, everything is set up the same as usual. I've got the target set up at 40 yards. I've also got the chronograph so we can get our velocity out of the shell. So let's get you guys a view of this target and take this shot and see just what kind of a waterfowl pattern we can get from a load of TSS 9s. I expect to see a pretty nice pattern, but let's head over here and try it and see what kind of results we get. Alright, so that shell gave us 1482 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1400, so we're definitely getting up there and moving on out with these shells, that's for sure. But a TSS number 9 at almost 1500 feet per second, that's going to be more than enough energy for ducks out at 40 and 45 yards all day long. So we are a little bit above their claim, but I'd say we're looking pretty nice as for velocity up here, as long as the pattern was able to hold together after being pushed that quick, which I think it actually did very well. But let's go down range and see what kind of results we actually got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. And yeah, we absolutely have a dead duck here all day long. He is just covered in pellets. And we were still just a touch low on the actual paper here. But as you can see, that is a pretty tight overall pattern when it comes to wing shooting and waterfowl shooting. It really doesn't give you a whole lot of left to right leeway. It gives you a decent amount of up and down, but if you don't lead your shot right on that one, it's pretty tight, and especially in those closer ranges, you may very well miss that bird. And that is a load of TSS 9s going through an improved cylinder choke. It ain't like we stuck a full choke or something in there and took that shot. That is an improved cylinder choke, and it's still that tight. So yeah, you would absolutely crush ducks out at 40 yards with that kind of a pattern all day long. But that might be a little bit too tight for some people. I think it could kind of go 50-50 on this. Some people would really like that kind of a pattern to really knock those ducks down. But for the other crowd, that might be a touch too tight for them, especially if you're going to be decoy hunting at 20 to 35 yards or so, that kind of range. That's definitely on the tighter side. Now, I have a feeling after seeing this, if we drop all the way down to either something like a skeet choke or a cylinder bore choke, that's going to be pretty much the perfect 20 gauge waterfowl type of pattern. But as for a pattern here, as you can see, the main central majority core area of the pattern, there is no voids or strings or anything like that in there. Around the edges, we do maybe have a couple of little flyers and stuff up there at the top, and maybe one or two down there in the bottom corner, but nothing major at all. I don't think this pattern's doing anything weird, so it definitely is looking very nice. And after seeing what this did through an improved cylinder, it would not surprise me if you could actually turkey hunt with these shells pretty decently as well. I mean, that pattern right there would get you a turkey at 40 yards, but maybe that's something we'll have to try at some point in the future, is some of these shells put through a turkey choke and just see what happens. Either way, I don't think there's much more we can say about that pattern. I think it kind of speaks for itself. A little little bit on the tighter side, but with a touch more open of a choke, I think we can really get a nice, super even pattern with pretty much the perfect spread for both the people that like a little bit more wiggle room or leeway and the people that really like a lot of pellets on target downrange. So definitely nothing short of impressive here today, that's for sure. That would hammer all day long out at 40 yards. Okay, and here's the wad from that shell, and even though I am by no means a wad expert, that's for sure, it really reminds me of one of those low bore contact wads like we saw in some of the Kent 12 gauge turkey shells that performed really well. It has these ribs down the sides, and as you can see, even though it is going through an improved cylinder, it looks like there was very little actual bore contact with the wad, and judging by the pattern, I clearly think it did its job. Now, it's not perfectly even as far as opening up, but I really don't think it made much of a difference for today. Maybe this one pedal caused a couple of those flyers up at the top, but that's negligible to say the least. But overall, no damage, nothing stuck down in there except the little cork piece they use, and looks very good, and I'd say it did its job perfectly for today. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about those results right there? Definitely very impressive. That is a very nice pattern that a lot of people wouldn't be scared to hunt with, that's for sure. Now, for some, that might be a little bit on the tighter side, which is not always a bad thing. We can always go to a more open choke than that with a skeet or a cylinder bore. And I think those two are going to give us a really nice pattern that kind of makes both sides of the crowd happy when it comes to leeway versus pellets on target and stuff like that. But for a 20 gauge, 7/8 ounce load of TSS in a waterfowl type of shell, that's gonna hammer all day long out to 40 and 45 yards. So I don't think we can complain too much about that, that's for sure. But as always, leave your thoughts down in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of the Salt Creek triple curl waterfowl shells? And if so, what kind of results have you seen out of them? Is there another choke that you might want to see these particular shells shot through? Would you hunt with that kind of a pattern, or is it just a little bit on the tight side for you? Let me know all that stuff down below. But definitely nothing short of impressive for today's results, that's for sure. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.